Hello, it is Mark's NOTCAST, and welcome back if you're a repeat viewer. Number 351, 6th of January 2024. Surprising the march of time. Today I am talking about Pink Floyd's, I think it's their 8th album that was released in September 1975, but they started recording it in January 1974, 50 years ago this month. It is well known to most people, has a song that almost everybody knows but nobody can remember was actually not released as a single at the time. It is Wish You Were Here, or perhaps in its French title, Ce n'est pas un voile, which I think is almost definitely incorrect because I have a Birmingham accent and there is nowhere called Birmingham in France. So start the tale with a slightly different kind of approach and a bit of information and news for you. If you're on the various social media channels, YouTubes and whatever, Pink Floyd have done their traditional annual copyright dump. That is EU copyright law, which means if the recording isn't published officially in the 50 years after its recording, it then goes out of copyright, which means that if you're Pink Floyd and there are existing audio recordings from the relative and respective year, is that you have to make them available to the public or you lose the right to forever exploit them commercially in any planets, galaxies, formats, etc. So, in case you're wondering, what are all these new Pink Floyd live albums that have been published in December 2023? The answer is they aren't new, they're very old, and they're generally pretty dodgy audience recordings of shows from 1973. They're definitely not worth paying money for. They are well circulated amongst the bootleg community, and whilst they're interesting, they're not essential. You don't need them. Absolutely not. You're not missing anything by not having them at all. There is only one official Pink Floyd live recording from the 1973 to 1979 era, most of which is on the deluxe expanded edition of Wish You Were Here, which is here, the 2011 Immersion box set, and also on the Dark Side of the Moon box set as well. But obviously I did Dark Side of the Moon about 6 weeks ago. And because Wish You Were Here started recording 50 years ago this month, I decided it was time to talk about that. Nothing else, there's also the anniversary of the next Pink Floyd album coming up towards the end of the month. I don't know why that just looked weird as opposed to trying to give you some kind of secret hint as to what I'm going to be doing at the end of the month. It's pretty obvious I'm going to be talking about Pink Floyd's Animals. So starting with Wish You Were Here, and have to do a little bit of a history tour as we go along. So the band toured until late 1973. And actually the strange thing about Dark Side of the Moon is no matter how successful the album was, the band only played about 4 shows in Europe that particular year, so they didn't actually do a European tour on the back of their biggest and best-selling album. You know, they toured like mad for most of 72, 73, but 73 was, I think, 2 American tours, I think 2 British shows, and maybe a couple of German ones, and that was it. Not very much at all towards the end of the year. So there was, on the back of their biggest selling album, Pink Floyd stopped touring, which is a little strange, but Pink Floyd were nothing if not a little strange after all, and that's probably a very good thing about them. At the end of the tour in late 1973, the band dispersed and went their separate ways for a period of time. Gilmour produced a band called Unicorn and heard a tape of a child prodigy called Kate Bush, who he then kind of pushed towards EMI. Rick probably went sailing. Nick probably bought some cars, and Roger probably wrote some misanthropic songs about how everybody on the planet is an evil bastard. Now that sounds very flippant, but of course flippancy is not necessarily always a bad thing. The band went into the studio in January 1974 to begin recording Wish You Were Here. And they had they started with a project that they called Household Objects. The concept behind Household Objects was that instead of using a bass guitar and a standard guitar and drums, they'd use things like, you know, a rubber band. Maybe they'd try to use like a tabletop as a drum and those type of things. And they didn't get very far in that, it's fair to say, after starting the recording. In fact, they got so far as to release one whole song, which didn't come out at the time, but actually was released on the mega edition of Wish You Were Here. and I think that the track is called Wine Glasses, and it says From Household Objects, which is the only one that they've deemed fit to release. Now, Wine Glasses is effectively the beginning of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, and Shine On You Crazy Diamond being the first song on the album and the last song at the same point. And of course the album isn't just one song long, but it is a concept where Shine On You Crazy Diamond was effectively, and to quote one of the members of the band, said it was built out of bits. So it was built out of individual parts of songs that they then kind of formed together to create one cohesive whole. So Shine On You Crazy Diamond is 9 individual parts, although it's split into 2 halves. The first 5, I think, are on side 1 of the album, and the parts 6 to 9 are on side 2 of Wish You Were Here. And that's an interesting way of creating a bookend for the album. Now, the reason that Shine On You Crazy Diamond probably isn't the only song on one particular side is, firstly, it makes the track order and the sequencing difficult because there's no natural conclusion to the album. Otherwise, there was, I think, effectively the fade on Welcome to the Machine, which probably doesn't work particularly well as a closing part of an album. The second one is, if you put the 2 parts of Shine On You Crazy Diamond together, they're about 28 minutes long, and then that makes the other side of the album about 16 minutes long, and it unbalances it a little bit. So, you know, the considerations of the format are important and always have been. You know, the reason that the Flaming Lips song was only 24 hours long and not 72 hours long when we're talking about the 2011 24-hour song score was because that was the maximum length that iTunes thought that a file or a song could ever possibly be, is 24 hours. Somebody picked an arbitrary figure out of the sky and went, that's the number. We don't think anyone's going to be daft enough to write a song more than 24 hours long. And lo and behold, the Flaming Lips wrote one that was exactly 24 hours long. Same thing with Shine On You Crazy Diamond, is that it is, its size and shape, the way that it's known and loved by everybody these days, is defined by the song's format restrictions around a vinyl LP. History before the album came out, between the 18th and 26th of June 1974, there was a French tour which had some new material that was played in it. And then between 4th of November and December the 14th, 1974, there were some UK shows. And the UK shows were the first time that most people had had a chance to see Pink Floyd following the release of Dark Side of the Moon. And they played some new material on that tour. Most of the new material was captured on this well-known and much sold bootleg Pink Floyd 74, which I think was recorded live at Stoke Trentham Gardens, which I think I've been to a gig there. It's not a vastly impressive place. It was later kind of replicated, so this is not the original 1974 LP. This is this is actually probably more like a 2010 kind of reproduction of the original bootleg LP from 1974. This sold about 100,000 copies, by the way, apparently, because people thought, well, it's a new album, isn't it? It's got Pink Floyd there. They're playing live. It's got songs we've not heard before, so they played 3 new songs on the tour. They played a song called Raving and Drooling, which later turned up on the Animals album as I think what was it called? I can't remember. And then Gotta Be Crazy as well, which was also on the album. And then side 2, they played Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which was 22 minutes and 5 seconds. The lyrics, which are here on the back of the LP, are taken from the tour programme from 1974, so you could sing along if you wanted to a song that you'd never really heard before. At this point, the band had written more material than they had space for, so they'd written some extra stuff. So they'd written Shine On You Crazy Diamond, Wish You Were Here, those type of songs. They'd also written, as I said, part of the Animals album with You Gotta Be Crazy and Raving and Drooling, which I think Raving and Drooling is Sheep. I think it could, or I think it is anyway. And those 2 songs, the band kind of thought, well, actually, we need to put them inside a concept. So they began to think about, as with Dark Side of the Moon, albums that were themed around concepts and ideas that unified the themes that came inside the songs. It wasn't just a collection of, here's the 10 next songs, like Big Black or Shellac or someone did that, where they just went, well, here's the songs that we've written. So what's it about? It's about 50 minutes long, and it's about 12 songs, and it's the next 12 songs we've written. Pink Floyd albums from here on in had themes and concepts that aligned them so ideas that hung upon the album. And Wish You Were Here as an album is, in my opinion, a very good record about absence and presence So you look at the cover art that we've got for this. We've got the man on fire. He shouldn't be there. I mean, he should be running away. We've got a suit, but not actually a man inside this cover here. Where then, if you go to the inner sleeve, we've got obviously the picture there of effectively like a shroud, but there's no person inside the shroud. And then we've got the diver photograph, which is on the back here. I'll bring that a little bit nearer for you. And the diver photograph is, if you look very, very closely at it, and I think I'm going to have to go into a book called Mind Over Matter, The Images of Pink Floyd by Storm Thorgerson, which is, oh, that's a drumstick, which is here. This is a great book, by the way. If you get a chance to find a copy, do pick it up. And the image of Shine On You Crazy Diamond and Wish You Were Here, and let me see if I can find the photograph, was about a place where objects meet, but they don't belong in the space in which they are, which becomes a recurrent theme in Pink Floyd imagery in future. So let's quickly kind of go along here. So that's the famous photograph of the stuntman on the film lot in America. They're shaking hands with somebody. It's an image where you kind of sit there and go, that shouldn't be the case. That really shouldn't. There's the image there of the man in the suit, but he doesn't actually, as you can see, there's no flesh on his body and his face is just a mask. Welcome to the Machine is a human hand shaking, human hand shaking hands with a robot hand. That was used on the record labels that we've got there. So all of these are around, an unlikely or impossible kind of confluence of events. These two photographs there, obviously about the shroud in the image that should really be containing something like a dress just hanging on its own in the middle of the air. So those were from the photographic evidence that we've got. And then this one here, taken in Lake Mono in California, just south of Death Valley. For those filmically minded, it is a location used subsequently by Clint Eastwood in High Plains Drifter. This is called The Diver, and if you look at it, there was a man there holding his breath for 3 minutes underneath the lake, standing completely still, and therefore kind of creating the absence of, well, there's just these legs, there's not the body, there's not even any the telltale signs of the person being a human, such as like tiny little air bubbles or anything. And you can hold your breath for about 3 minutes. They took a few shots and one of them turns out okay. So that's Wish You Were Here. There's also this photograph about a man swimming in a desert called The Meaning of Life. Not quite sure the meaning of that, but again, it's all about situations and circumstances that people probably shouldn't be in and don't belong in. And Wish You Were Here as an album is a concept around both absence and presence. So in the autobiography of Ronald Reagan's daughter, bet you didn't think I was going to go there, there's a very telling phrase about Ronald Reagan when he was president of the United States. His daughter said his absence was like a presence in itself. And Wish You Were Here is an album that was, the songs are around, obviously, the absence of communication, the absence of expected things like collaboration or friendship, around the theory of when something is lost and you don't necessarily know that it's there. Now, that reflected the band's interpersonal politics at the time. So, as Roger said in the Pink Floyd lyric book in 1982, during the Wish You Were Here sessions, most of us didn't wish we were there at all. And David said, we were having to decide whether we were artists or businessmen. And when you have the means to achieve your wildest childhood dreams, you have to really, really want to do it. And then there was this kind of sense of going, well, actually, after on the back of the financial success of Dark Side of the Moon, if you don't have the compelling financial need to work, then every bit of work that you do has to be done because you really, really want to do it, as opposed to any other reason behind it. And I think that was where we started to have a disparity and a distance that started to form between the people that were in the group. As David said in 2012, and this was on the Story of Wish You Were Here DVD, which was released a year after the Immersion box set, so it's not included as a documentary in there. He says, it was disengagement, unwilling to apply themselves, and the concentration was diluted. So we start to see what happens to a lot of bands when they become successful, is that instead of it being a group kind of moving together and pointing in the same direction to achieve an outcome, there then starts to be a fractured approach to what's going on, and instead of it being 4 people pointing in the same direction, it becomes a series of individuals that are trying to achieve similar but not exactly identical goals. And you start to see the differences in personality and in workload that happens between the various members of the group. Roger self-appointed himself king and leader, or the creative genius of Pink Floyd, according to his posters, which he's using to this day. As if somehow all the other people in the band had no creativity or genius whatsoever, and came around and zoned in on this theme of absence as a presence in itself. The recording for the album itself properly started around about 6th of January 1975 at Abbey Road Studios, and there was a US tour between the 8th of April and the 27th of May 1975, and then a second tour that ran between the 7th to 28th of June 1975. And according to rumours, and rumours are just rumours, the band was starting to pull in different directions at that point. They were playing material from the album live, but the album was still months away from release. It wasn't released until the 15th of September 1975. And in between the tour, the recording sessions, which ran from the 5th of May to the 5th of June and the 7th to the 19th of July 1975, again at Abbey Road, the album was finalised. It was out 2 months later. So the Monday after the band headlined the Nebworth Festival in the UK in 1975, the last show of the Dark Side of the Moon tour, which had been going on for 2.5 years, they'd finished the album, and the album was released 2 months later. And there were no shows to promote Wish You Were Here. Effectively, the tour previewed the album in a form, and it's an unusual set list. I have a compact disc bootleg of the show at I think this is the Boston Gardens, Crazy Diamonds, released in 1990. This is an Italian Fat Box 2 CD version of an launch recording. This is meant to be one of the best gigs of all time. I don't know whether it is. I was not even 2 years old when this happened, and astute viewers will notice there is the copyright stamp on the back before the UK joined the EU officially as a trading partner, and that copyright stamp meant that mechanical royalties were being paid to Pink Floyd, and therefore it was legal to release. Once that pink stamp was taken away, all the bootleg companies kind of fell into disrepair around about 1995, 1996, just after the Oasis summer 1996 shows, and then that meant that bootlegs were more difficult to obtain from there on. They still happened, of course, but they were more difficult to find, and they weren't so readily imported or easily available. This is the recording of the show, I think, at Boston. Yep, Boston, June 18th, 1975, and that features the set list, which features Raving and Drawling and You've Got to Be Crazy, plus Shine On You Crazy Diamond, Have a Cigar, Shine On You Crazy Diamond Part 2. So that's the first 40 or so minutes of the show, are completely new songs, including 2 which weren't going to be released until the album after the album that hadn't even come out yet. Then Dark Side of the Moon in full, then a version of Echoes to close the show. Pretty exciting set list, actually. You think the first time you hear 40 minutes of Pink Floyd material is live, played in front of you, and in one case it doesn't come out until nearly 2 years later. Pretty exciting stuff if you're a fan. But obviously in those days, audio recordings were home dubbed. They were circulated on cassette and vinyl LPs. It wasn't all uploaded to YouTube the next morning in a multi-camera edit using a professionally remixed or full tech software kind of remastering. It was what it was, and so bands felt a lot more comfortable about playing new material live rather than previewing it on a crappily home recorded kind of video on YouTube. So that was the tour. So the tour for Wish You Were Here was finished more than 2 months before the album came out, which is pretty surprising, although the album was mostly written at that point. And there was rumours on the last American tour of indiscretions amongst the touring party, and that's probably the politest way to put it. Roger got divorced. There were some arguments amongst some other members and their respective spouses, wives and significant others around various things, and obviously, when you're on tour in America and you're hundreds of thousands of miles away from home, there's a huge kind of time difference. There's no such thing as camera phones, for example, or anything like that. So the way in which you could behave was probably far more liberated than it would be now. I mean, sometimes I think about some of the things that I did when I was maybe 20. And I'm very, very glad that there wasn't social media in those days. I think I would have been a lot more cautious and a lot less stupid because, of course, you can have one bad night and then everyone sees it forever on the internet. Whereas then, if you had one bad night, most people forgot about it 6 months later, if they even heard about it. So you had, the ability to make mistakes without necessarily the ability for it to be immortalised forever. And so that's why I've said that there are rumours, unsubstantiated rumours, about indiscretions in behaviour on tour that meant that I think Roger did get divorced. Roger's been divorced more than once. So then again, so have I. So I'm on very thin ground when I talk about these things, don't I? So what we found with Wish You Were Here as an album was a very different Pink Floyd than the version of the band that had made the previous record. And by that, what I mean is that we had a band that had a degree of financial security, that didn't have the need to tour necessarily or to release hit singles or anything like that. They'd got a built-in audience now that was going to be able to sustain them for a period of time. And headlining Nebworth, 100,000 people, or thereabouts in 1975, really, really big deal. Pink Floyd stopped doing radio sessions. They stopped releasing singles in most parts of the world. They were able to engage the world completely on their own terms in a way that worked for them and without any necessary thought about commercial considerations, which is occasionally what happens, of course. They bought Britannia Row Studios, which is in King's Cross in London, and they bought a whole bunch of touring equipment, several trucks worth, which they used for their own touring. And when they weren't touring, that equipment was then rented out to other people to maintain and keep the band's headquarters, effectively becoming, whether they liked it or not, a relatively small business in the audio-visual world, and being able to pay off the amount of money that they owed to Syd for buying out his rights to the band when he left. The other thing is, Syd, as is well known, did turn up at the sessions, walked into Abbey Road during the recording and interacted with people for a period of time, apparently didn't like what he heard and walked out, which is pretty surprising, all things considered. He'd become practically a recluse at this point. I think he was not writing music, not performing music, painting, and living a very quiet life, again, completely on his own terms, and as happy as I guess one could reasonably be about that. Is to go, well, when you're faced with the situation of, well, do you want to be in a really successful band, or do you want to do something else? Kind of go, well, you've got to do what you can reconcile yourself to. There's a photograph of Syd, which I wish I'd got to hand to show you, but you can Google it. It's very easily found, of Syd having a photograph taken of him at Abbey Road at the studio, and when he walked in, and people were like, oh, who's this dude? And then after a while, someone was like, I think that's Syd. And after some strained conversation, he kind of wandered off a bit, really, which ties into the theme of emotional absence and repression, which runs through Wish You Were Here like a stick of rock. So that brings us very nicely to the opening track on the album, Shine On, You Crazy Diamond, which is the first song I ever saw performed live by any member of Pink Floyd, when I saw David Gilmour at the Royal Festival Hall on the 22nd of June 2001. I thought I'd never see any member of Pink Floyd play live, and I've had the good fortune and timing to see Pink Floyd, David Gilmour, Nick Mason and Roger Waters all play headline shows in their own right, or as close to headline shows as they've ever played in the past 30 years. So the theme of Shine On You Crazy Diamond was around absence, and it was clearly about them kind of like talking about using Syd as a way of talking about absence and change and losing touch with people that you've grown up with. And I've had people that are friends of mine that I probably will never speak to again, because numbers change and people change, and then you don't see them anymore, and then all of a sudden it's like 10-15 years since you last saw them, and as the song time goes, the thought about how time moves so quickly and so fast, and then all of a sudden you realise you saw people that you haven't seen for a very, very long time indeed. And of course, there are some people that you never want to see again, because when you change, the version of you that exists in somebody's mind is the last version of you that they met. I think about, for example, one specific ex who I haven't seen for 23 years. The version of me that exists in their mind, not the person that I am, and isn't the person that I've been for 23 years. But that's the version of me that exists in their mind. And no doubt the version of them that exists in my mind is the version of them that died 23 years ago. And the thing that then you can't really force it or anything like that. It's just that's how people change, isn't it? Over time, as we evolve, we chip away at all the bits that don't look like us until we have the bits that look like us that are left. And Shine On You Crazy Diamonds is a song that really talks about that and the concept of who you were when you were young versus who you are as an adult, and how those things change over time. The lyric around "Remember when you were young, you shone like the sun." Idea, when we were young, we were full of ideas. We were full of ambition and hope, and the future was a promise and not a threat. And we were very, very keen to face the future full on and to make it happen. And then all of a sudden, over time, as you start to have to limit your ideas, and things start to narrow down into a much, much smaller cone of what's possible. And then suddenly you can find yourself waking up one day and suddenly thinking, this is not my beautiful house, this is not my beautiful wife. Well, how did I get here? And thinking about, is this the future that I would have planned? Is this the life we really want? And those are themes and concepts which Roger's returned to many, many times throughout the course of his creative activities. And there's this wonderful line about you wore out your welcome with random precision. The idea that there was just, as you kind of followed that path that you'd set for yourself, is that not everybody went with you on that path. Not everybody went in the same direction. And saying goodbye to that, and then recognising that's the change that happened. Obviously, Shine On You Crazy Diamonds is picked up again, parts 6 to 9 on side 2 of the LP. The bit where he sings, "Nobody knows where you are, how near or how far. And we'll bask in the shadows of yesterday's triumph." Those lyrics around going, well, so that was our history and that was our past, but this is where we go next, and what the future looks like. I think "Shine On You Crazy Diamond" is one of the greatest Pink Floyd songs that there is. If I had to rank them, I'd probably surprise you with some of my choices. I think 3-4 is probably my favourite one of theirs, for example. But at the same point, this was a band that really was, even though you could see the differences in the personality that was happening between the people that were in the band, they hadn't yet got to the point of starting to tear themselves apart, as often happens with groups, is that there are different ideas and egos, and people start to think, well, actually, I'm working with these people because I've got to work with them. And then you get to the point where you go, well, do I have to work with anybody? And then somebody splits and ends up being, captain of their own ship, as opposed to part of a wider fleet. It's a great song, really great song, absolutely love it. And there's this haunting 4-note guitar element which starts at the do dee do do, which obviously I can't do it, but it kind of captures this haunted melody that kind of touches upon the things that could have been, like the ghost of Syd past and Syd present. "Shine On You Crazy Diamond" is sung by David. And it's sung by David because, as Roger said, it was right at the edge of my range. I always felt very insecure about my singing because I'm not naturally able to sing well, which you can kind of tell. His voice isn't perhaps the easiest on the ears, but God damn it, he gives it a damn good try. And when you listen, there's a song called "Lost Boys Calling," which he recorded in around about 2000 for the soundtrack to a film called 1900. And there's a vocal of that which is painfully out of tune on one version of the song, and there's another version that is considerably better. The second song on the album is Welcome to the Machine. And Welcome to the Machine is a classic. It wasn't played live by Pink Floyd vastly often, apart from I think 1987, 88, 89. Not played in 94. And Welcome to the Machine is this dark kind of throbbing, somewhat evil song around being subsumed into the business. So Wish You Were Here isn't just about the loss of childhood dreams. It's not just about, the absence. It's also around the fact that Pink Floyd had become a business. It started to be eaten by a monster. And the lyric around, for example, which is also kind of picked up in Have a Cigar, which is around, what did you dream? We told you what to dream. You dreamed of a big star. He played a mean guitar. He loved to drive in his Jaguar. So welcome to the machine. And then Have a Cigar, which was the next song that was on there, is sung by Roy Harper. And the reason it was sung by Roy was because the band did record studio versions of it with Roger and David, but they didn't think that they could acquit the vocal the way that they thought that the song deserved. Roger definitely didn't think he could sing it. And Have a Cigar is a song about, again, being in the band and being successful. That line about, and by the way, which one's pink? And we tell you the name of the game? We call it Riding the Gravy Train. You've got to get an album out. You owe it to the people. We're so happy we can hardly count. Have you seen the chart? Again, it's a song about being successful and having the things that you think that you want, and then finding out maybe they aren't the things that you want. Maybe what you want actually is something different. And you've got to be careful about fulfilling ambitions. Are they your own ambitions, or are they other people's ambitions? And if you judge, let's say, a footballer by the standards of an octopus, they're always going to fail. If you judge them by the standards of a footballer, they're probably going to be better at it. If you judge other people by what you expect from them, they're going to be a failure. And this is a thing where you sometimes see where families, where someone goes, they were never the person that I hoped that they could be, or anything like that. And you kind of go, well, you laid out a path in your mind for me that wasn't the path that I was going to follow. And that's the relationship I've got with my dad, is that he expected me to be somebody that I wasn't, to fulfill ambitions he wanted for me, as opposed to the ambitions I wanted for me. And the ambitions I wanted for me were very different. But then I've got my life to live, and I've got my path to follow, and it's really important to get that absolutely right, isn't it? As opposed to follow what anybody else might want for you. That is both Welcome to the Machine and Have a Cigar. And let's quickly go into the vinyl here, because I actually have to point out first and foremost that the label on side 1 there is, again, as you can probably see, is a human hand holding a machine hand, and that's kind of replicated on the other side, on side 2 of the album. Is the concept of man and machine, which obviously was the Kraftwerk episode I did recently, but about a man becoming part of a machine organisation and being part of a wider kind of ecosystem around capitalism. Unite and overthrow the bourgeoisie, comrades. I don't strictly mean that, of course, by the way. So that is Wish You Were Here, the songs. Have a Cigar, by the way, was released as a single, not in the UK. Pink Floyd didn't release any singles between 1969 and 1979. Instead, France got Have a Cigar as a 7-inch, backed with Shine On You Crazy Diamonds. And Have a Cigar there was released on Pathé Marconi. This is a kind of like a dinked 7-inch of it that's pretty beaten up, because hey, it is 50 years old now, or 49 years old, and it's just got the 7-inch mix of Have a Cigar that I think is the same as the LP, but also Shine On You Crazy Diamond Part 1 is the B-side. So that is a fade before Gilmour's guitar, just of the keyboard introduction, 3.5 minutes or so, which is an exclusive edit that's only on this 7-inch. But that said, as an exclusive edit, it is also just a fade just before the guitar comes in on the title track. And then we have the title track itself, Wish You Were Here, not released as a single, despite being incredibly popular, following the Led Zeppelin approach of being popular by not releasing singles so you can't have flops. And that is a strange beastie, it's fair to say. because Wish You Were Here is a song that everyone seems to know, and nobody seems to know that it wasn't a single, but it wasn't. So you think you can tell between Heaven and Hell, Blue Skies from Pain, and again, a song, Wish You Were Here. So when people would send postcards, when they were on holiday, in the days when people sent postcards and not just Instagram posts telling you how amazing it was wherever they were on the, the mountains of Ayia Napa or something, the songs, or more correctly, the phrase Wish You Were Here was kind of like going, well, wish you're on holiday, but I'm going to send you a postcard to make sure that you know that I'm alive and having a good time, and I'm eating lots of food that makes me fat and lots of beer that makes me drunk. That's how holidays used to be. And you used to have your 2 weeks in the summer where you'd have to go and sit on a beach, you'd get sunburnt, you'd come back and you'd be like, ooh. And it always felt, I prefer to take holidays little and often as opposed to a big lump. I'm a big lump. But that was kind of how holidays worked. And Wish You Were Here was the thing that was, on the postcards, having a lovely time. Wish you were here. I'm at the sea, you aren't. Which, of course, if you live near the sea, isn't quite as glamorous or as exciting. The other part of it is around Wish You Were Here is that concept of absence, that concept of not being part of something, of being on the outside of or excluded from something. Once you become famous and successful, not that that will ever happen to me, I imagine that there are things which you can't be part of anymore. You can't go down to the pub and hang around with your schoolmates because all of a sudden you've got to be in, LA or something for work. And then that's a different way of thinking or living. So Wish You Were Here is about how success also creates barriers between people, about the barriers between people that exist anyway at the best of times around things like human insecurity, anxiety, repression, that's very English, around how people don't necessarily communicate. They think they're communicating, but they're not communicating. Kind of like when people are just waiting for someone else to be quiet so they can speak, as opposed to having a genuine conversation. And there's the line there about hot air for a cool breeze. The phrase hot air, frequently used to describe when someone's just saying stuff and it doesn't mean anything. A lot of bluster, sounds of fury signifying nothing, for example. And then that line about, did you exchange a walk-on part in the war for the lead role in a cage? Were you imprisoned as part of something and then unable to participate in the world that was happening around you as a result? Yeah, what a great song. And then it closes with Shine On You Crazy Diamond, parts 6 to 9. This huge, overarching, epic track, which picks up the themes from the start of the album, the ones about absence and presence and childhood and history and mortality and change as you mature and you become an adult and everything that goes with it. And the album kind of ends where it begins, on a reprise of Blowing Wind as the song kind of fades into nothingness. And the time is gone, the song is over, and we thought there'd be something more to say. And that was Wish You Were Here, which was, in my opinion, a really bloody great Pink Floyd record. Difficult period of time, and an album that has aged very, very well. Now, originally this was packaged in a kind of like a black plastic bag with a sticker on, the idea being that you actually had to tangibly interact with the art and destroy it in order to access the art that was inside there. My copy, because I didn't buy it in 1974, I was far more interested in banging a toy than I was in banging a drum. This is obviously a second-hand copy where the original plastic cover has been discarded over the previous half a century. The album grew in stature. It sold more because it was going to sell more, and because people weren't going to there weren't singles or anything. So if you wanted to get the tracks from the album, you had to go and really just own the bloody thing, which is obviously also, by the way, the AC/DC approach. Why AC/DC haven't done a greatest hits, because they go, no, if you want to own You Shook Me All Night Long, you have to go and buy the bloody record. You can't just buy a greatest hits and pick it out, although they kind of undid that a little bit with the release of Iron Man 2, which technically is a soundtrack and not a greatest hits. 2011 saw the release of, alongside the Discovery box set of remastered Pink Floyd albums, or Immersion editions, so super expanded box set versions of a number of the albums. And this saw regularised, standardised CD mastering for every single one of the records after 1992 to 1994's original CD issue. and it also saw configuration and standardisation of packaging, track listings, and so on, in much the same way as the Beatles. Previously, in 1994 or 1992, there had been this CD edition of Wish You Were Here, which was a digital remaster with a picture disc that was in there, but some of the other albums didn't have the same luxury and benefit of mastering. For 2011's Discovery set, everything was aligned and configured to be part of a bigger whole, and then followed up with the Discovery box set, which was all the studio albums in a box set. So let's go inside the 2011 Immersion edition and see what's in here, shall we? First off, let's take the box off. I'm going to be careful to take the box off so that all the contents don't come flying out. Here's obviously the cover to the Immersion edition. This retailed for probably £60-70 at the time. Nowadays, a Pink Floyd box set like the Dark Side of the Moon one would be about £250. It would be ridiculous. But when people are putting together these box sets, they know their audience, they know the market, they know how much money the average Pink Floyd fan has, who's in the market to buy a box set, reminding them of what life was like when they were 15 and not 65, and how much, where people are in that. So, for example, the target demographic for this box set in 2011 was probably somebody that was between, let's say, 20 and 30 in 1974. So somebody that was born between, let's say, 1944 and 1954, who at the time when this came out would have been in their late 50s, early 60s. They probably would have been on a final salary pension if they'd retired. They almost definitely would own their own house and have paid off the mortgage. The kids would have grown up. They would have had more money than most people would have had. And they kind of sat around going, what am I going to spend the money on? Now, that sounds strange. It really, really does, especially in the current economy. But as the older people get, the financial profile that they have tends to change. The expenses and costs which people have tend to change as well, especially if you've got mortgages. When mortgages are paid off, you don't have the half or a third of your income disappearing to pay for the roof over your head. The children, let's say they've moved out, you don't have to pay for them anymore. You have those kind of things which are going on, and then you end up with more money than you had previously. That is the target demographic that these box sets are aimed at. I, on the other hand, just waited until it got cheaper and bought it when it was significantly cheaper. I think I paid £30 for this in about 2014, 2015, after somebody had like, well, why did I buy it? And I don't need it. Or maybe it'd be like, my husband bought it, now he's dead, I'm going to go and take it to the shop and get some money. So for all I know, the person that owned this previously may be dead 10 years by now. And that's the risk when you buy second-hand records, is you won't go, am I just buying a dead man's record collection? Well, who knows? I try not to think about that. I know I definitely have, actually, for some CDs, because the guy that I bought it from in the shop says, I remember selling it to the guy, and then he died and his wife brought the CDs back in. That was after I paid for them, which is a strange way of thinking about it. And so Wish You Were Here, the box set, the target demographic for this is people that weren't my age when it came out, but people that were older and had more money. And of course now they've got more money still, probably final salary pensions. Let's say if you were born in 1944 and you were 30 when this album came out, you'd be 80 now, and you'd have, you might not remember who Pink Floyd are anymore, but you would have been on a final salary pension, mortgage would have been paid off. If you'd made the right decisions, you probably would have done quite well. Bands have really, really good ideas around, that who are their fan base? How old are they? How much money have they got? What social strata do they sit in? Are they ABC ones? Who do they vote for? How much disposable income have they got? You used to be able to see all this information for free. Now you have to pay for a subscription for it. So the Wish You Were Here box set is a luxury product designed to extract money from people, and the profit margins on it are quite big, as I'm sure you can appreciate. Now, to prevent bootleggers and counterfeiters, we have 4 shrink-wrapped coasters. Why anybody would use those, I don't know. We also have, of course, the ever mockable marbles, and great big blocos they are. 3 Pink Floyd marbles. I mean, I guess they haven't got Pink Floyd or anything written on them, so just marbles really inside a little cloth bag. I assume that these are the same ones that it was originally sold in. I can't see anybody actually going and changing them. What would be the bloody point? But people are strange. You also have Immersion's collector's cards. So these are 4 postcards. This one featuring the masked gadgets of Uxemenes. This one, the Wish You Were Here tour program cover. This one, Momentary Lapse of Reason, Beds on the Road. And this one, Q, featuring the 4 members of the band standing at Kew Gardens. Kew Gardens, by the way, is the tuppery that is used in the video to The Caterpillar by The Cure. So that is the cards. Then we've got memorabilia. Ooh, memorabilia. What's in there? Well, a reproduction pass and a ticket for a show on the Animals tour. Not quite sure why they're in there, but again, all this stuff is expensive to produce at smaller scale. So this box set design is designed to deter counterfeiters making it cheaper and biting into it. We have, for some reason, a Wish You Were Here scarf or some kind of weird fucked up flag thing. No idea why. We have a credits booklet which gives you the credits. Of course, this is all packaging. This is all merchandising. This isn't designed to enhance your experience of the album. It's more like you've got a portable museum of Pink Floyd in 1974 on the album. We've got a reproduction lithographic print of the diver photograph there. That's very nice, ideal for framing. We have a small photograph of books, a small book of photographs by Jill Furmansky and Hypnosis. So let's have a look in there. And by small, I mean it's like 3 millimeters thick, maybe 16 pages. There's Roger pulling a face, thinking he's hilarious. Other band members hard at work, staring at things, tour photographs, that type of stuff. Again, this is a flick once and keep things. This feels like it's been included to kind of plump up the price as opposed to actually add anything to the experience of the box set. And then we've got an expanded CD booklet, which is 12-inch by 12-inch size. Contains track listings for each of the 5 discs that are on the expanded version, lyrics, photographs of t-shirts, memorabilia, rejected cover art. Again, another shot of the divers. Outtakes from the photographs, photographs of the band. That's the cover of the 5-1 mix when it was released as a standalone DVD, and other kind of editions there. So let's go in to the audio that's on the box set and see what's in here. So CD1, 2011 remaster of the album. Nothing too exciting there. You will know it and love it. CD2, previously unreleased audio. So this is 3 live songs recorded at Wembley Arena in December 1974. The other part of the set, the Dark Side of the Moon set, was released in 2011 on the Immersion edition of Dark Side of the Moon. The one remaining track, Echoes, was released on the 2016 early years box set, which means really Pink Floyd fudged it. They could have released a live album of Pink Floyd live in London 1974 and made it a standalone release that was affordable and accessible to everybody. It would have sold big numbers, and but they chose not to do that and instead chose to parcel the album out, or the live recording, into 3 separate releases that you then had to compile separately. Idiots! But so be it. Of course, what it does mean is that we do have an official Pink Floyd 1974 live album. It's just in pieces scattered over various box sets. There is a DVD here, which contains 5-1 surround mixes and the 4-channel quad mix from 1973. For the 2009 5-1 surround mix, by the way, which is also on this Blu-ray here, there was a slight bit of re-recording. One of the piano parts in Shine On You Crazy Diamond was missing a tiny section. So on the day after, David Gilmour, Pink Floyd's Rick Wright, and of course Nick Mason played together at the Royal Albert Hall on the 1st of June 2006. Rick Wright went back into the studio to re-record that piano part. So the DVD mix there has an exclusive performance, albeit a very small one, of a piano part for Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which is pretty exciting if you're a music nerd like me, and utterly boring if you aren't. And if you've made it this far and you're not interested in this album, why are you watching this? watch something else. But it's a bit late to tell you 50 minutes into it. Then finally, DVD 4, and on the Blu-ray features concert screen films and other short films. So these are films that were projected behind the band while they were performing in 1975 and later on in other tours as well around the album. So which are 4, and let me just quickly check: Shine On You Crazy Diamond, parts 1 and the main bulk of the song, plus Welcome to the Machine, the well-known animation. That is your 5-disc set. The other thing I will say is apparently there has been a manufacturing defect on some of the Blu-rays, which EMI are not honouring replacements for, so you may see some deterioration in your discs. So buy these versions with care. I can't tell you which versions are which because I don't honestly know. Now you'd have thought that would have been the whole thing. Well, no. A year after the release of the Immersion set came one more release, The Story of Wish You Were Here, the classic album's documentary about the recording of the album, which was released in 2012 because it wasn't ready to be released in 2011. This is really interesting, fascinating from the band's own mouth, story of the making and recording of the album and the circumstances that went around it. Needless to say, I watched it and all the extras in my preparation for this. This is an interesting show. It's almost definitely free on YouTube at the moment, so don't feel like you've got to buy the DVD for it. Finally, I do have one more thing to show you, and that is a bootleg, the Wish You Were Here Extraction Edition. This is a vinyl version of some of the bonus tracks from the Immersion edition, which features, let me just quickly check, an alternate mix of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, and a studio demo of Welcome to the Machine, Have a Cigar, and the version of Wish You Were Here, which features Stefan Grappelli on some form of viola, I believe. This was published about 10 years ago after the Immersion editions were released. So if you absolutely positively have to get the Pink Floyd bonus tracks on the Immersion editions, then this is one of the ones to go for. It's pretty good, but a completely unnecessary purchase. But all records are unnecessary purchases. Only bread and water and electricity and medicine are necessary purchases. Wear sackcloth and ashes. No time for luxuries in this world. Of course, complete nonsense. I should point out that the extra tracks on the on audio CD number 2 is Wine Glasses, which is the introduction to Shine On You Crazy Diamond, but played on wine glasses, an alternate version of Have a Cigar, an alternate version of Wish You Were Here. So that vinyl one features apparently an exclusive alternative mix of Welcome to the Machine and a previously unreleased mix of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, where the track is played as one cohesive whole as opposed to split into 2 parts over 2 sides of the vinyl. That is Wish You Were Here, and thank you so much for spending 53 minutes with me whilst I talk about a very, very old record, but not quite as old as me. Only slightly younger than me, but still very, very old. And that now means that being in 2024, I have therefore passed the EU copyright expiry limit upon myself. Luckily, I have been released, so no one else can exploit me under the copyright laws. I'm not quite sure that's how it works, but there you are. Anyway, thank you for making it this far. I really enjoy this record. One of my favourite albums, actually. I always remember Wish You Were Here. Whenever I think of Wish You Were Here, I always think of a neighbour. So I lived in a place called Sutton, which is near London and near Surbiton as well. And the neighbour in Surbiton, not Sutton, actually, I should get that right. The neighbour in Surbiton was made redundant and lived above me. And he would listen to this album endlessly in the days after he finally left the job and was looking for new work in 2004. And every time I think of Wish You Were Here, I think of that, and I think of him, and I hope whoever you are, that you're doing okay, and that you found the path in life that you wanted, because I could tell that it was a rough time for you. There was a lot of Pink Floyd that you were listening to at that point in time. Anyway, take care of yourselves and each other. Stay beautiful. I will see you all soon. My next one, well, I know what it's going to be. And if you think of any major events in world and rock history that are coming up shortly in early January, I'm sure it won't be a surprise to you. I can't give everything away, so instead, I'll see you then. Okay, bye.